Well, thank you everybody for being here. I know we started a little bit late, but we'll try to get through this relatively quickly. Today is how to conduct a successful brainstorming session. I know that when Larry created the space here in Caves and Commons, he really anticipated as the agency starts to grow and innovation is kind of what we're always pushing for, that we have lots of area for everybody to break out and have, brainstorming sessions and really work through projects so we could get the best possible product in. By doing that, you have, these brainstorming sessions, and I know they can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming. That's what we're going to try to do, is shed a little light on that today.
Yeah, try to organize it a little bit for you, show you how to approach putting one up, putting one together, getting it up and going, getting the most out of it, keep it going, and get it to a point where you're going to get the end result that you're looking for on that. And if you've been in the agency business for more than 24 hours, you've probably been exposed to, in one way, shape, or form, having to do or be involved in a brainstorming session. What we're going to do today is talk a little bit about how to execute one, how to get it started, how to organize it, get the right people involved, prepare the session, work yourself through the session and keep it going. We'll talk a little bit about the rules of engagement and how it's going to work, running it through, and then closing it out, getting to the end result and the next steps of what you're going to do with it. Might as well just click it though. So brainstorming is not brand new. It's been around since probably the mid-50s. Really got a lot of focus in the mid-50s when I began. And so what you'll find is, though, it's a great way of getting a large volume of ideas on a very specific topic. So the whole premise is about keeping it tight, keeping it focused, and then throwing everything out and taking a look at it. Because some ideas you're going to come up with are going to be really bad, but they may give you an opportunity to identify another idea or make you think about another idea down the road.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting when you think about collective creativity and its process. No great innovation was ever thought up by one sole person. Generally, there's somebody that person had to bounce that idea off of, and through that conversation and through that frictions where the greatest ideas come. And I always think that conflict is a great opportunity for compromise, and compromise where the best ideas come from.
And everybody's coming at it from a different perspective, and we're going to get a little bit into who you bring to the meetings and what kind of backgrounds and so on. But that's really the beauty of it, is being able to get someone who's thinking differently about it than you are. You can get so close to it. We talk about that all the time in the account group teams too. When you get so close to the business and so close to the solutions and so close to the messaging, and you take a step back and someone says something to you and go, oh geez, how can you do that? It's because you've been that close to it, you've been so focused down. So you want to bring others into it and kind of get their collective ideas, and they're going to come up with something different you haven't even thought of. You can push the button. So how the heck do I do it? What I mentioned earlier is really the key to this. It's to get focused on what you're trying to get to. You need to come down to what is the objective of doing this brainstorming session? What am I trying to get to? And then allow the session itself to go deep. First, whoever's setting this up, whether it's an account person or a creative person or someone out of public relations, whoever's pulling this together needs to really understand and get focused on that one thought, that one idea that they're trying to come to as a solution. So what's the problem they're trying to address? What is the concept they're trying to identify? Be able to write that down, write it down clearly, in a way everyone can understand. It needs to be something that stands alone, that you can put up. You're going to take it at some point, you're going to stick it up on a wall, and that's going to be something everyone can reference later on as they're going through the sessions.
Yeah, the more clearly your focus and objective is, the more you can keep everybody on task, and the more prepared you are, the easier and fun the brainstorming session will be.
Okay. Keep going. All right. As Chris mentioned earlier, one of the key points is, as the leader, it's usually an account person, could be a creative person, but as the leader, that person's going to manage this whole process. It's going to be about who you select as well. You want to get an array of people from different backgrounds involved. When we do one, Allison did one the other day, actually did a really nice one the other day on Marion. And we had social involved and creative involved. We had a lot of people engaged in it. We had public relations involved. And everybody's coming at it from a slightly different perspective. Stuart was even giving this input. So we were able to use that and use all those different individuals that bring a different perspective to it. So
you think about it like you're putting together the perfect mind. Each person here was hired for their individual expertise in their field, and collectively, when you're organizing one of these sessions, you want to bring somebody with a diverse opinion. on the strong opposition of yours. Everyone down to even including our receptionists. That way, when you're putting it together, you're getting a unique set of perspective and input into that collaborative process.
Try to keep the group down to a manageable size. If you get it too big, it's going to be all over the place. It'll be tough to control, and not everyone will have an opportunity to speak and get involved. I mean, as the leader on this, your job is going to be, as we get into it a little bit, your job is going to be kind of keeping the bunnies in the box, allowing a balance
Herding
between
cats.
herding cats. You want to have a balance between keeping it structured, but also allow it to be free-form enough that you're not blocking things off and killing ideas before they even get started. Once you've got your that statement, that understanding of the objective laid down and really clear, what you should do is get an invitation out to all the players that you want to have in that meeting. Explain the purpose, give them a copy of that statement, and get them whatever other background information is going to be helpful for them to walk in understanding the business and the concept and what you're trying to solve. You've got a good creative brief, you've got a project brief, get those on there. If you've got a piece of research that's particularly important, get that to them too. Don't rely on just putting it on the server. Send it to them, because they probably won't look for it if you don't give it to them, or at least put it right in their hands. So you need to make sure they've got the information that they need. Second piece is don't overwhelm them. If it's not really pertinent, don't give it to them. All right, so a good brief is good. You need to have your statement, and then if there's a nice piece of research or a piece of data or a particular competitive issue, get that in their hands as well. So that email should carry everything they're going to need to get their heads wrapped around this business.
Yeah, and honestly, if you do not have the time to read the documentation that was sent to you beforehand, my honest suggestion is don't go to the brainstorming session. Because there's nothing that kills the creativity more than having to explain everything that everybody already knows in the room.
All right, bringing idea starters. And this could be really helpful as a way of just getting everybody thinking about maybe it a little differently. What is a competitor doing? What's going on in the trade or in the industry that you think is pretty cool and might have an application to this? Use those kinds of things to get minds going a little bit, keep people from being stagnant and thinking within their own little world. So anything you can bring out to into the meeting is going to be helpful, kind of getting a starting point for it.
Well, and a great suggestion for that is downstairs in our bookshelves that you see before you enter Julio's office, we have an entire library of CAs, communication arts, if anybody doesn't know what that is, and just general things, even bringing toys or something fun that people can kind of interact, just stimulating the other senses. You wouldn't be surprised having something as simple as a rubber toy that somebody could squeak in their hand while they're thinking. It really stimulates other parts of your brain and gets it more open to shooting us ideas.
Another thing, just in terms of setting the session up and getting it going, you're going to be the moderator. So your role in all of this is to keep it flowing, keep it going, and keep it on task. Set up somebody to take notes. Somebody specifically, that should be the only person in the room with a laptop, by the way, taking notes. And that person is going to take all of the detail stuff. Personally, I like to do it with a place to write, either on the wall like this or a pad, and use those. Every time someone comes up with an idea, however good or bad it is, write it down. Jot it, put it up on the wall. Because at some point, you're going to come back over and you're going to stand there and say, oh, you know, that one we talked about, that might have something I can think of, makes me think about something else over here. So you want it as a reference point during the meeting. Personally, I like to do that part of it myself, separate from the note takers, because I know I have a feeling for where things are going to go, and I know what I'm trying to get out of this. So be able to be up there and maybe be that, not quite a scribe, but keep the big ideas up on the wall, I find helpful. But there's other ways of playing it too.
Yeah, and really the rules, when you're starting to set the session up, you need to state those every time. And I can't state that enough, because when you're starting the session and you reviewed all your documentation and you're talking about what you're trying to accomplish, you need to tell everybody this is purely volume versus quality. We need as many ideas from you as possible. So we really try to set those rules of engagement and say no negativity, don't worry about the minutiae, don't worry about the execution yet, let's just think big picture and try to keep it going. Because sometimes the best ideas that seem so far-fetched, when you scale them back after you spend some time on it, turn out to be the perfect campaign idea or the perfect suggestion.
Or might lead somebody in another direction. And that's what will happen a lot of times, is something will be up there and you say, geez, that just doesn't make any sense at all. And then 15 minutes later, someone else is going to bring something in and go, oh, wait a minute. If I take that idea and I connect it to this idea, now I've got something that might work as a concept. But I used to have a client that used to say, I don't want to kill a bad idea just because it won't work. which kind of a slap in the face. But it was also a kind of thing where we kept those things going. We kept them up on the wall, kept them into the conversation, because you never know where it might lead down the road.
Yeah, we really try to work through, each concept. Weird and wacky ideas, as crazy it sounds, for you to even, get involved. It's a little bit, I would say, vulnerable to put yourself out there with an idea that you think may be far-fetched. So we really try to create an environment where we explore every weird, wacky idea and see where it ends up. And like you said, one idea may connect to another one, and boom, you've got exactly what you need.
But it's also important as the moderator on this, as the person running the show, you take all of that in. You really need to be the one not to allow others to push back on a bad idea.
Yeah.
You need to be the one to say, no, wait a minute, hang on, stay with that for a second, what are you thinking? So people don't feel, otherwise people are going to start closing down. And you have to be real careful about having people close down in the meeting, because that's going to ruin exactly what you're trying to get to, is a free flow of ideas, and just throwing stuff on the wall and see where it begins to go.
Yeah, it's hard to remove yourself from that at times, because being an account manager, you're dealing with a client, you know where your client's going to say yes or no to, but it's our job, and good creative should make you feel uneasy. It should challenge the norm. And when we talk about innovation, innovation is a product or a service that takes a different approach that hasn't been thought of yet. And really for us, if we're going to constantly push the envelope to try to expand what we're doing here, it should make you feel uneasy. It should make you excited. And that usually comes from just the off-the-wall comment somebody made, and then that builds into an idea. That idea becomes a campaign. That campaign gets you a Clio.
One of the points on here is work through each concept. It's, if someone throws an idea on the table, a what if, as the moderator, your role is to kind of take that what if and push it to the next. All right, well, how would you do it? Who do you end up talking to? How are you going to execute against it? What are you going to say about it? And ask the others in the group to start feeding that. Play it out. Don't let it just die with someone said, how about do this? And everyone goes, okay, and how about do this? Play it out. Get a little more out of it. Look for work the room, if you will. It'll help you start to get everybody's engagement as well.
Yeah, and as a team leader, you should contribute. And I always put here to run the session, not your mouth. It's so much easier when you're guiding everybody to start to steer where it's going. You don't want to do that. You're a moderator. You're really trying to cultivate that air of creativity and get people excited. And look around the room. If somebody's being silent during the entire session, you have one person that will be the only person who will talk 90% of the time. You need to find a way to get them to complement what the others are saying. So if somebody's being silent, hey, Andrew, what do you think about this? Get them to work through it. It's really your job as a moderator to get the most out of the people that you brought to the meeting. Because you got to understand, as Larry always says, each time that we're interacting with each other or talking about a client, that's billable time. So we need to make sure that the time we spend is well worth the client's money.
Yeah, and I think the key here for us, for anyone who's running the session, is going to be that hitting that balance. It's going to be the balance of keeping all the bunnies in the box and then letting them flow around too. You don't want to have it to a point where you're shutting them down and you're so rich and you got 10 minutes and now we're going to get to the next session, the next piece, because we're going to go off to that. It'll kill everything. Let the thing flow. Let it play out. It may take you in weird directions. And it also, we didn't kind of talk about this in the beginning, but it also, there's no time limit on this. It's not like to do a brainstorming session is you got to block off an hour, or you have to block off 2 hours. Not every brainstorming session has to be like an Evok. You can do it. Allison did hers the other day in half an hour, I think, something along those lines.
Yeah. 30 minutes.
It was great. I mean, we moved quickly. We got some good stuff out of it. You could still see some of the pieces up on the wall. And everybody had some input to it. So don't think of it as I have to block off half a day to do this. Get the group together. Use it as a tool. It is a great tool.
In my former CD, he had a great mantra, and it was be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. It was really, if your meeting is run correctly, it shouldn't take very long. Once you start getting in the habit, and I know that this is a daunting task to call one, it may be a little bit nerve-wracking for some of you, but that's what we're here for. As a senior team, Larry has made an investment in having a strong leadership team. We're here to help you. If you want to run one and you want some assistance, we can give you, if it starts to run flat, we can give you ideas for creative games to get people to start interacting. Something as simple as just getting people to name keywords about the client. Those are your kind of vernacular to start the conversation up. There's different ways that you can do it, and no session will be run the same way. So there's no way we can sit here and tell you, like you said, For getting a branding brainstorming session, this is what we'll have to do. That's where creating that agenda and working with your, your senior leadership team on coming up what you want to accomplish is very, very key. This is kind of the most important part. When you're going through and you've got this tremendous volume, you see a lot of lateral thinking here where somebody's coming up with an idea and the arrows are kind of filtering itself down. Every once in a while you should stop and say, okay guys, we have a lot of stuff here, let's pare down what we think. And it's not to discourage any ideas, because if Perry thought this idea was great and I go back and go, let's think about this crappy idea, I don't really think this is good. You got to be very, very careful, because these are people's babies. And
yeah, so tossing the bad idea may not be the right way to term it. You really prioritize it more than anything else. What are we going to focus on? What are the ones that we want to, because you don't want it, to Chris's point, you don't want to have someone who just threw out that bad idea shut down for the rest of the day because you just crapped all over their idea. So you got to work with it. Bring the ones that work, that go to the top. What are the ones we like best? Yeah. Where do we think we have some legs to work out of?
And good ones for that are like you see that would be great, but what if? That's another way of moving on past the subject and not really spending a lot of time. And honestly, if things start to get to a point where they're kind of laboring on a subject and you guys are getting too granular, I always say let's just table this to the end and we'll revisit it. That way you don't want to distract from the team. But again, paring those ideas down to the core of what you feel is kind of the cream of the crop, and then from that, kind of going back and push back on the team and say, what do you think, guys? This is a stronger area where we need to do that.
Okay, so what do you do at the end of all this? Right before you're ready to close out, if you blocked yourself a couple of hours or an hour or
15
whatever,
minutes.
15 minutes. If it's 15 minutes, take the last 10. What you want to do is kind of like wrap this thing up a little bit. Take a look at it, summarize where you are and some of the things that you think we've concluded. See if you get everybody's agreement that that's what you came out with at the end of this. At the end of the session, at the end, just recap it all, pull it all together, and what you want to do is get to the point where you can give out next steps and create an action plan. So this meeting is now over, all the pieces have been written up, you have your note takers done it, you got all your stuff on the board, it's going to be a mix of those two to your notes. Get it into everybody's hands, and then start assigning who's going to do what. Okay, we've got something here, this is a really cool concept. Andrea, give me some ideas on how you could execute that on the social side, and Stuart's going to be thinking about doing something else with the media component of it. We're going to try to get those, kind of get an action plan to move it to the next stage where you have something to bring to a client or something to bring forward and begin executing against.
Yeah, and that way people know when the meeting's done that they've contributed something. Another great way is if there were so many ideas that were coming out, and obviously you had to stop the meeting at some point because there's only so much time during the day. A great way to get more input is say, we'll follow up, I'll send everybody the notes from this meeting. If there's anything you forgot to put on here or wanted to add on, please let me know and send it back. That's a great way while somebody is leaving the meeting, while you're driving home, or when I'm driving home, that's sometimes where my best ideas come from. So following up with a short, email or reminder after may be able to get you even more, great concepts or ideas.
Yeah, agreed. The key as the moderator, as the leader of this, the key is to manage the process a little bit, keep everybody focused on what you want to do, keep everybody motivated to continue to throw things out in the hat. When it starts to slow down, send it another direction. So you've got that flexibility that you can move them around a little bit, change the conversation, change the dynamic, focus on something, or pull back from something. Your idea is to keep it going. The whole idea is to just keep it going and keep it motivated.
Yeah, and with the creative process, people always ask me, how do you think of all the stuff that you guys are tasked with on a daily basis? And when we're developing a creative story, I always say good brands tell good stories. Sometimes I will think of the end of the story before I think of the beginning. So when we talk about the creative process being circular, it's not linear thinking. So when you're brainstorming, it's much about a circular process. So you're kind of getting pieces and parts and seeing how you can line them up. And it is a little bit daunting at times, but these are the things that will make you extremely great at your job, regardless of what it is. Brainstorming is a necessary step in the evolution of creating something revolutionary. Like I said, no one great idea was thought of or executed by solely one person. There's usually a team behind that, and you guys are that team. But that was kind of it.
Yeah. Questions, comments, observations?
What do you think the most common mistake is when putting together brainstorming sessions?
I can tell. is not being prepared.
Right.
Yeah. Not having the background, not looking at the information, not knowing.
Just thinking you go in and wing it.
Yeah.
What's the right amount of people to have in a brainstorming session?
Under a dozen. 10.
I would say no more than 5.
And does the number of people impact how long the brainstorming session should be?
I think it impacts specifically, the more people you've got, the harder it is to get everyone engaged. So it will drag out if you've got more people. You're going to need to get more people involved, and you're going to need to take more time.
Do you agree with using tools or techniques to force people to participate? I mean, I've been in brainstorming sessions just
Like
because
waterboarding or like...
No, just because of the personalities of people that, you know, maybe they're either younger in their career or they feel like they may not have anything to contribute, whatever. So, but really their ideas are very important, and that's why they're there. Their relevancy is really, it's relevant for them to be in the meeting. And so what kind of exercises do you get? Do you go around there and make sure everybody says something, or?
Well, it's a good point that you bring up. And I watched a TED Talk the other day, and the lady's name was Linda Willis, and her sole job was to interview, I think it was 15 to 20 Fortune 500 companies that were the most innovative in their industry and find out what made them so innovative. And Pixar was one of the ones that they spent a lot of time on, and I thought it was very interesting. Most companies, the dichotomy of how ideas are brought to the table or R&D is developed, it starts from the top down. It's like a pyramid. You have the CEO, and it kind of trickles to the smaller, ingenues of the team. And in Pixar, it's actually reverse, Larry. So the CEO is kind of at the bottom, and the younger team is at the top. And at any given point, they're the ones who, on whatever campaign you're working on or whatever movie they're doing, who can give script edits or revisions to a story because they felt that they had the most to offer. And I think at a lot of agency, it's very intimidating when you're coming straight out of school and say, well, I have a lot of ideas, but I'm too afraid to share it with the team. You guys don't understand that your perspective is fresh. We're a bunch of jaded ad executives. You know what I mean? So what you bring to the table, as scared as you may be to voice what you have a fresh opinion that we can't relate to because we're not your age. We're not just entering the industry. So your perspective, although it may be scary, I highly encourage any intern or any new employee to voice their opinion, to share their concepts as much as possible. If you're too afraid to do it in a meeting, send it in an email afterwards. When we talk about, hey, is there anything that you wanted to add in here? Start challenging yourself to speak up. So I strongly feel that you guys are the backbone of advertising because you're the future. We're not the past.
One of the things that I always hear is, there are no bad ideas, right? There are bad ideas. there are absolutely terrible ideas. However, you have to feel that in a brainstorming session, I feel that you're in a trusted, safe environment so that you can bring up something that may be a good idea, may be a bad idea, and then you have to have the understanding that the people that are around you, when they're giving you constructive criticism, if they tell if you together realize that it's a bad idea, you just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Because the next one on the list. One of the farthest reaching promotions that this agency ever did was formulated in a brainstorming session of about 20 people, and there was about 140 ideas, I think, that we came up with for promotions, and one kind of rose to the top. So that's where we went. But that doesn't mean that the other 139 ideas were bad. Now maybe the bottom 9 really stunk. But the thing is that you one, contribute, 2, accept constructive criticism, and 3, say your next idea.
Yeah.
Just don't feel like because some senior person was able to tell a junior person, that really won't work because you can't do it this way. Use that as a learning opportunity for yourself and then move on to the next idea, I think.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, in some of the best brainstorming sessions and the coolest creative that I've ever come up with, somebody just laid a dud and just said the worst thing, which starts kind of a joking banter, and sarcasm I always feel is kind of the realm of creativity because there's an element of truth in sarcasm, which makes it kind of even more funny. And from that really bad dud and the joking back and forth bubbled up one of the best campaigns. So again, I think it's just the way that you handle the input and create the culture, and Larry's done a great job at creating an environment where we have lots of opportunities to take yourself away from your desk, whether it's to go out on the balcony and enjoy the sunny day and talk about our product. If we had like we've got a new client that is doing pool chemicals. If we went to a Leslie's pool store, and that's where we had kind of a brainstorming session and people just walked around. There's different ways of challenging yourself to think of a project completely different. And that opportunity and the nuances of that are what really allows us to create those wow ideas.
Yeah, and I was serious when I said it before. Don't be afraid to use it. Even if you want to pull a half an hour and everyone just sit in a room for a couple minutes and just talk about what's going on, get some other ideas, get some thoughts. I mean, you'll be able to cull things down a little bit easier.
Actually, that's kind of what my question is. So how do you, what's the best way to determine when is a good time or opportunity to have a brainstorming session?
Let me think. Brainstorming sessions are used, the best way to use a brainstorming session is to have a very specific goal you want to get in the end. Okay? Don't think of it tactically. Think of it bigger than tactically. If you're trying to say, we're going to brainstorm about what medium we're going to do, that's not where you go. Think of it conceptually. Think of it from bigger. Think of it from a messaging standpoint. We're tackling a problem. So start with the problem you're dealing with. You've got an issue with sales volume. You've got an issue with a competitive promise or a competitive claim that you're trying to figure out how to tackle. Start with those kinds of things. Usually are the easiest way to do it. If you make it too specific and too tactical sometimes, it can be hard to kind of break through and just throw things out on the wall.
And when you get the skills down, honestly, you can use it for a variety of things in a variety of ways. When I talked about 15 minutes, some of the best brainstorming sessions I have, when you get used to doing it, it becomes part of the culture and you adapt to it, they really shouldn't last much longer than that, because you've got the team prepped, you go in, it's go time, bam, 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 bam. Because until that meeting's happen, your subconscious is constantly working on whatever problems you do. And that's the great thing about the human mind, is you have your primal brain and then you have your logical thinking brain. The two are constantly at odds. Think about it when you have a beautiful cake in the fridge. And, man, it really would be good to have a slice of that now. And your brain's like, well, you don't want to gain weight, you want to do that. You have that constant battle. No matter what problem that you are being tasked with, whether you realize it or not, when you're sleeping, your brain's going to be thinking about it. It's constantly going. So the best way to do it is that preemptive email and prep beforehand, so that when you're coming to the meeting, you'll be challenged, you'll get into the habit. Like, how many people here have actually conducted a brainstorming session here? See, so look, there's lots of opportunities for someone to do their first one.
Excellent.
Any other questions for us? Cool.
That's it.
All right.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks, guys.
And